Welcome to Daily Variety, your daily dose of news and analysis for entertainment industry insiders. It's Monday, January 12th, 2026. I'm your host, Cynthia Littleton. I am co-editor-in-chief of Variety alongside Ramin Satuda. I'm in LA, he's in New York, and Variety has reporters around the world covering the business of entertainment. In today's episode, we'll hear from Rebecca Rubin on the box office, and then I'll share some impressions of last night's Golden Globe Awards ceremony, which was very long and very fun. But before we get to that, here are a few headlines just in this morning that you need to know. Paramount Skydance is taking their beef over Warner Bros. Discovery to court. The studio has filed suit against Warner Bros., seeking to force more financial disclosures about the studio's sale to Netflix. The suit accuses Warner Bros. Board members of violating their fiduciary duties by not engaging more with Paramount and its many bids for the company. This process gets messier and messier. New York's new mayor, Zohran Mamdani, has made his choice to lead the Mayor's Office of Media and Entertainment. That's the powerful office that oversees all filming as well as nightlife in Gotham. Rafael Espinal is a former New York City Council member and Freelancers Union Executive Director. R.I.P. Bob Weir. The only job he ever had was being part of the legendary Grateful Dead. He was a teenager when the band started. The music will never stop. All of these stories and so much more can be found on Variety.com right now. If it's Monday, we're talking box office with Rebecca Rubin, Variety's senior film and media reporter. She's keeping tabs on whether Avatar: Fire and Ash can keep up its streak of #1 finishes at the box office, and there were good signs for Paramount's Primate and Neon's latest, No Other Choice. Rebecca Rubin, thank you for joining me, as always.
Thank you for having me.
Well, as you predicted, it wasn't a gigantic blockbuster of a weekend here in mid-January, but there are definitely still some interesting threads and some green shoots for movies. Since we talked last week, I've been very curious about, can Avatar: Fire and Ash match or exceed the box office streak of the previous title? And that one is, if I recall right, was 7 weeks. This Avatar: Fire and Ash now has made it 4 weeks, so they're a little more than halfway there. How do you assess the film after 1 month at the box offices, which that seems like an eternity these days?
Yes, definitely. I am also curious to see how long Avatar: Fire and Ash will be able to top the box office, because the prior two films both were #1 for 7 consecutive weeks. There are a few new movies premiering in January, and so it'll be interesting to see if those movies are able to succeed or if Avatar is going to continue powering the box office. This weekend, the film brought in roughly $21 million in its fourth weekend, and that's a drop of roughly 50% from the prior weekend. And so after about a month in theaters, it's made $342 million domestically and $1.2 billion globally. It reached the billion-dollar milestone not as quickly as its predecessors, but pretty fast by any other blockbuster standards. So again, the question still looms of where does this top out? It does seem to be experiencing diminishing returns compared to the first two, but diminishing returns for a movie on this scale is still a huge, huge number.
When a movie's in theaters that long and you get to like week 4 and you're going to go into week 5, do you see a lot of midweek business, or is it really still powered by Friday, Saturday, and Sunday?
It depends on the time of year. So the week between Christmas and New Year's definitely has huge midweek business. At this point, kids are going back to school. When people are back into the swing of things in the new year, midweek business slows down a bit, and then it really is the weekends that's packing in the attendance.
Sure, that makes sense. Well, we'll keep watching the coming weekends. Let me ask you about a newcomer, Primate, which I will say Paramount had a strong marketing campaign on that film. Those spots were pretty arresting for somebody who is not terribly in the market for horror movies, but it got my attention. How do you assess that performance?
It looks like it's opening right now in second place, and it brought in an estimated $11.3 million domestically and about $13 million globally. And that's a decent start. It's not electrifying the box office by any means, but it only cost $21 million. And so it's on the the lower end of what production budgets have been recently, and so it doesn't need to make a ton of money to be a win for the studio. The film is actually the first release under the studio's production deal with the former DC Films chief Walter Hamada.
Well, that's an interesting entry from the new Paramount, and obviously, Walter Hamada is somebody who knows his way around genre pictures. Let's talk about The Housemaid. This, I know, has been such a success story for Lionsgate, and they really needed it because last year was a pretty hard year for them at the box office. And I have been a fan of Paul Feig for a long time. And as I'm seeing the commentary on this movie, I'm just thinking, is there anything he can't do? Slapstick, genre, heart. I think he is a fantastic filmmaker.
The Housemaid has been having excellent staying power at the box office, and it was number 3 this weekend. It made around $11.2 million, and it's in its 4th weekend of release, so it's really great staying power, and so far the film has earned almost $100 million domestically and then almost $200 million globally, and it's just a great result for this mid-budget film, and this movie cost just $35 million to make. It's hugely successful for Lionsgate. It's also hugely successful for theaters, and I think it's just an example of when there's a movie that is fun to watch with an audience, people will go out to see it, and that's definitely what we're seeing here with The Housemaid.
That's a really hopeful sign for exactly these kinds of movies, and we talk often about just how hard they are to open. Every successful movie and TV show is lightning in a bottle, there is no question. But director Paul Feig has a pretty good track record and has his hands on those thunderbolts. I can't help but think, Rebecca, Paul Feig was part of the great late 1990s NBC series Freaks and Geeks, and was there ever a television show that yielded more superstars in our business? That little show came from Judd Apatow, gave us Paul Feig, who was a little bit on camera and also a writer, Seth Rogen. There are more. It's really something. So yay for Freaks and Geeks alumni. Since we're talking just a few hours before I head off to the Golden Globes, let's talk about a couple of artsy contenders. Marty Supreme certainly seems to be chugging along respectably.
It is definitely still chugging along. This weekend, it made around $7 million, and that's a decline of around 38% from the prior weekend, and it pushes domestic ticket sales past the $70 million mark, and that makes the movie one of A24's highest grossing films. And it's just starting its international rollout. It's only been in a handful of theaters, so it'll be really interesting to see how it resonates overseas. It has a budget of $70 million, and so it definitely needs to keep playing at this level because theaters get to keep half of revenues. But speaking of awards attention, like you said, Timothée Chalamet just won the Critics' Choice Award. He's nominated tonight at the Golden Globes. He's probably going to find himself in the Oscar race, and so that definitely helps justify the spend to a studio like A24, and it's doing very well at the box office. So overall, I think this is a big win for them.
I was at the CES show in Las Vegas this week, and so I've come back with all the jargon, but in a world where it's all about the attention economy, Timothée Chalamet deserves the Oscar for promoting this movie. You can see his commitment to this and really getting people's attention, so good for him, good for him. Anything else at the box office that stands out to you? Anything else you want to point out?
One other film that has caught my attention so far is Neon's dark comedy No Other Choice. That's from the acclaimed South Korean director Park Chan-wook, and it's still in limited release. It's only playing right now in 147 theaters, and just this weekend it made $1.3 million and in total has made $3.4 million. And at a time when a lot of platform releases really aren't working, this is an example that is clearly resonating with moviegoers on the coast. That's mostly where it's playing right now, and so it'll be curious to see when it expands nationwide if it's able to sustain that momentum. And it falls into the category we've been talking about, where it's a movie that's cinematic, feels fun to watch with an audience. Increasingly crazy hijinks are happening on screen, and so it feels a little more fun to watch it with other people versus at home streaming. And so that's one I'll continue to keep an eye on and see how it performs.
What are you looking forward to for the rest of this month or into early February?
So January is known to be a slower time for theaters, but it'll be interesting to see how a few movies that are coming up perform. One is Sony's 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple, and that's the latest movie in the 28 Days, Years trilogy. It's coming about 1 year after the last film, and so I'll be interested to see the appetite for this franchise if they can sustain momentum just 1 year apart. Another film that's releasing next weekend is an anime title called All You Need Is Kill, and of course, as we've been talking about, anime is one to keep an eye on. That could be a surprise hit for sure. And Amazon MGM is really starting to get in the theatrical game in a big way this year. And their first big release is the movie Mercy with Chris Pratt. It's a big budget sci-fi AI action adventure, and that'll be interesting to see how Amazon is faring in this unforgiving theatrical landscape. And so those are some movies I'm keeping an eye.
Your sense is that Amazon is gonna commit to theatrical releases, like, go wide when they have the goods and stick around in theaters longer than they have in the past?
They have said that they are committing to, I want to say, roughly 12 to 14 movies a year, but that takes time to ramp up for sure. And so this year, I'm not sure exactly how many movies they plan on releasing, but they definitely have an increase from last year where I don't think they had any meaningful box office.
Well, they have Sue Kroll and Courtney Valenti, two seasoned Warner Brothers veterans who know how to make movies and put them in theaters. I can tell you for the latest 28 Years Later movie, that has gotten heavy, heavy promotion in football. They are trying to reach football fans, male and female. I mean, every game that I have watched, and I feel like I have watched every game in the last probably 10 days, every game I've watched has had heavy promotion for 28 Years Later. Rebecca, as always, thank you for shining a spotlight on the box office, big and small, and giving us those kernels that help us interpret what's going on.
Thank you so much for having me.
And now, listeners, permit me to clear out my notebook after a long week. The juxtaposition of covering the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas and being part of the Golden Globes world this weekend has been fairly dizzying and detrimental to my voice. Funnily enough, the mood at both events was surprisingly similar. There's excitement in the world of tech and next-generation media because there is so much potential coming into focus. The generative AI revolution is real and it is happening, but it is not a dark cloud that is going to envelop the creative community. AI tools are a form of clay that can be molded by humans to enable great things. It matters who is doing the molding, and it very much matters what material underlies all these programs. And speaking as an author who is part of the Anthropic settlement, it really matters how that training material is acquired. But you can't stop progress. So that makes events like CES and the summit that Variety hosted there that much more important as a forum to air all of these things. Coming back to LA, I dove into the Golden Globes party swirl. Yes, it's a tough gig sometimes. I felt encouraged by conversations with industry insiders that I had about exciting plans and projects coming up for this year. There's a lot of talk about what's coming up at Disney with the Bob Iger Succession drama that is coming to a head. There's a lot of odds making going on about where Warner Brothers Discovery ends up, in the hands of Netflix or Paramount Skydance. But there's also a strong feeling that the way forward for traditional Hollywood is becoming more clear. There's increasingly a clear path for how TV and film assets will be threaded through to streaming platforms, how the wild world of the creative economy will plug into traditional TV, film, and advertising. Fast channels are the new syndication, and that's really good news because it means another monetization event for creative talent. The box office had a very rough 2025, but there were a lot of green shoots for mid-range movies that are the toughest to get moviegoers into theaters for. And the Film and TV Globe winners from last night demonstrated that cinema is truly a global business. From The Secret Agent to Sentimental Value to Adolescence, there is talent in all quarters of the world. None of this is to say that there aren't big problems that need to be addressed. We try to tackle them every day with our coverage in Variety, but there's more hope and direction on the horizon than I have felt for several years, and that's a good place to start the year. As we close out today's episode, here are a few things we're watching for. A bunch of big TV series are rolling out this month. On January 15th, Paramount Plus raises the curtain on Star Trek: Starfleet Academy. And on January 18th comes HBO's latest addition to the Game of Thrones canon, A Knight of Seven Kingdoms. Definitely don't miss my colleague Clayton Davis's profile of actor Jesse Plemons. He's a great thesp who busted out on the NBC series Friday Night Lights more than 15 years ago. Crucifixorious forever. We love to hear from listeners, so please send thoughts, gripes, and other feedback about Daily Variety to podcasts@variety.com. Before we go, congrats to Christina Garza. She's joined UTA's independent film group as an agent. She comes to the 10%ery from 5th Season, where she was Senior VP of TV Production and Distribution. Thanks for listening. This episode was written and reported by me, Cynthia Littleton, with contributions from Rebecca Rubin. Sticks, nicks, hick picks. Please leave us a review at the podcast platform of your choice, and please tune in tomorrow for another episode of Daily Variety.